Over the last couple of years in the automotive world, we've seen a huge amount of new car brands come into the electric car space from China. But what about vans? Well, allow me to introduce you to Farizon. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Farizon SV, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get started on this week's road test review of the new Farizon SV, it is of course that time when I'm going to ask you just to make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because then that's the way you get notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched the video, if you enjoy it, make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the new Farizon SV and of course on the AutoEV channel on the whole. So, couple of little caveats before we get started on the whole horizon. I am at a sort of like a closed event today, the launch event in the UK for the van, which is up at Millbrook Proving Ground, which means I'm not allowed to do a lot of filming outside, although I will be driving the van and you will see me drive the van. So I'm having to do a lot of this inside with the help of a videography team as well. So do forgive me if this looks slightly different to the normal video that we're doing. Right, so let's kick off with the main question you're all going to ask. Who is Farizon? What's going on? So yes, it is a new Chinese brand, but when I say new, if I was to tell you they're part of Geely Holdings, would that help you with some confidence? Of course, they're the people that own Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, plus lots of others. And Farizon is their commercial vehicle arm. And it's not just vans that they do. It's vans, it's trucks, it's buses. And of course, they've been very big up until now in the Chinese market. But this has been designed very much with Europe in mind, in some ways very much with the UK in mind, because the UK is a massive commercial van market, and this is a really big market that they want to break into. And this is their first product. Is it any good though? Well, let's take a deeper dive and find out. So as always, we're going to start with the design. Now, we'll go through various different specifications and stuff a bit later. Effectively at the moment, there are two lengths and two heights. So this is an L1H1. That's the sort of model designation. So the shorter of the two and the sort of like the smaller of the two in terms of its height. But in terms of its design, it looks very much the same. And that look, I think, is very futuristic. Now, it's very interesting because there is no sort of like legacy of, you know, converting, dare I suggest, you know, like Ford has done with the Transit, where they're making a Transit into an electric van, or Renault with the Master or whatever. This is a ground-up bespoke EV van. And that, I think, is the most important thing, because this looks like a ground-up electric van. It looks futuristic, and I think that's going to be quite key to making people make the switch. We know car buyers are quite keen to make the switch. We know car buyers are very open to electric mobility. Are commercial users? Well, I think this van's going to help them with that. And it's been designed primarily with visibility, as you can see. A huge big windscreen at the front. They've pushed the A-pillars right forward on it. The lights, these LED with adaptive main beam, are mounted very, very high up on the van, not down here. So there's good visibility forward. And of course, because it sits on a bespoke EV platform, there's no sort of like legacy of front bonnets or things like that. Obviously, this does open, where you can get access to sort of like some of the ancillaries that you maybe need to sort of like change, you know, washer fluids there and thereabouts, 12-volt battery, that type of thing. But you can see it's a very futuristic looking van. All the cooling's obviously done down at the bottom, and there's a huge amount of tech on it, as you'd expect. And of course, van drivers, they are expecting more of that tech as things move forward. Of course, you've got a front camera down there as well. You've got these tiny little sort of projector fog lights right down in the front there as well. But as I say, this is the main focus with this massive big windscreen with the pillars pushed right forward to give excellent visibility for the driver and of course front two passengers. But as I say, I think it's off to a really good start with the way that it looks. Now, you'll need to forgive the notepad and the spec sheets, because as I say, we were literally just handed these as I walked in just a couple of hours ago. So this is the first time I've been up and close to the van. So this, as I say, is an L1H1. So to give you an idea of its length, it's 4,990 millimeters long. In terms of its height, it's 1,980 millimeters high. So that's the sort of size of van we're talking about. Transit custom in this sort of like size here. Yeah, okay. Look at this, as I say, this whole kind of cab forward look that you've got at the front. Front wheels are pushed right up to sort of like the front of the, up to the front of the van. 16-inch wheels, big aerodynamic sort of wheels on it, steel wheels behind that with the airflow discs on them to help with the airflow down the side of it. You think it's very featureless down, but of course airflow is going to help with in terms of efficiency, and that's one thing that there's a big push on with this van is the efficiency. Now there's a really interesting piece of design I think on this side of the van here. So if you think about those lights, as I say, how it wraps around there and then just sweeps up into this window line here, that's not it. This is it here. If I open this front door and then that side loading door, there's no B-pillar. There's no B-pillar on the van, so in terms of the actual load space, which obviously we'll talk about in the practicality section, there's a huge amount of space to get stuff in there. And if you were thinking about it even from a private point of view of maybe converting it to camper or, you know, or a combi vehicle, could you imagine the amount of space you've now got without any sort of like space there, without a B-pillar there I should say. Absolutely fantastic. These front doors open up to 82 degrees as well. Again, we'll talk about that inside, but a huge amount of space to allow you to get in and out of it. Right, obviously the battery is also located underneath, and that's a big point of the van in terms of it doesn't really go into the load space, and there's a good choice of batteries with it as well. Twin sliding doors, obviously one on either side. But yeah, as I say, it's a van. There's not really an awful lot we can say about its, you know, like brilliant design, but in terms of the way that it looks, it's a very modern looking piece of kit, I think. And the design continues around the back. Look at these lovely sort of like stacked tail lights here, and then they just sort of like curve round to just have this strip right across the back there and then into the other side. I really like that. That's quite neat. And then a really nice, neat handle as well on that back door. We'll talk about towing as well, because the van is obviously capable of towing, and it's got reasonable towing weights as well. Obviously you've got high level brake light mounted in the doors there, but there's no real badging on it other than the Farizon SV obviously over on this side here, and that SV looks suspiciously like Lamborghini's SV. But look, irrespective of all that, what do you think about it? Because that's the most important thing. As a commercial operator, would this tempt you? Do you think this has got the looks of a modern van? Are you a little bit unsure because obviously it's a new brand? Or actually are you open to the possibilities that this could be a really cost-effective way for you to run your business? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Right, now obviously this is going to be the most important point of this van for you in terms of its practicality. So like I say, there are two variants of it. There's the L1H1, which this one is, so the shorter length, the lower height, but obviously you can have an H2, an L2H2 with the longer length and the higher height. However, one of the big things about this is the doors at the back. So you've got 180 degree opening as standard, but 270 degrees opening as an option, which is excellent because that allows you to get right up to a loading bay if you need. One of the lowest load heights in its class, 550 millimeters is the load height from this. Now in terms of overall capacity, I don't have a huge amount of dimensions, but when I get them I will pop them in the banner that you'll see there. But just to give you an idea of the broad spread of capabilities of the van, you're going from 6.95 meters cubed up to 13 meters cubed. It's 20% larger than its competitors in the market space, which is phenomenally good, I think. The other great thing about it is you've got vehicle to load capability, which obviously we'll talk about in the usability section. But in the back here, you've got the ability to have 3 power takeoffs as well, 3 3-pin plugs in the back there. So if you're working out the back of the van, you know, with power tools and stuff, there's already takeoff there. You can also see on this one there's a tow bar as well, and there's excellent towing capabilities with it. But as I say, I'm going to pop all the figures for you down on the bottom of the screen there, along with some B-roll of the bigger van as well, so you can see the insides of that. But yeah, it's a hugely practical beast, this. So remember what I said, this is one of the big things for me. The first thing you realise when you get into the van is how wide this door opens, 82 degrees. It's massive, it gives you a massive amount of space to get in here, and you are literally just stepping into it. There's a handle there, you just pull yourself up, and you've got this fantastic driving position. Okay, so Interiors of vans, you've got to think about it from this point of view. We're not looking here for plushness in some respects because it's a working vehicle. So you do want something that's going to be very easy to keep clean. You know, when you do get a bit grubby and a bit dirty, you do want sort of, you know, a relatively straightforward type of material on seats and dashboard and stuff for that point of view. But you still don't want to do without some creature comforts if you're spending your working day in the van. And I have to admit, Farizon do seem to have got this side of it pretty licked, I think. The first thing to talk about is the seat itself, actually. As I say, your driving position is lovely. You sit nice and high. The visibility you've got forward, as I said, in the design section is brilliant. You've got a huge amount of visibility there. The A-pillars are slightly thicker, obviously with the moulding that's on them, but you do get these front quarter lights, which gives you a great view forward. Everything's raised up, so you've got two screens effectively. So you've got a driver information display here, and then you've got this infotainment screen here, where a lot of things are controlled through, but not everything, which is a big thing for me, because you still have buttons, physical buttons on it as well here. So for your temperature control, you know, sort of like for your mode, for instance, you know, going through, you know, when you want radio or you know, your media control or whatever, there's an electronic park brake, there's auto hold, the hazards, all of that's designed with a very simple button pack that's up here. So again, nice, straightforward. If you're getting into the van, you're using gloves or whatever, they're nice and chunky and they're able to be switched on and off very easily. And they also feel quite quality. The buttons on them, I have to say, the actual pressing of them and the moving of the switches, everything feels like it's got a good quality about it. There's good storage as well. So you've got a little drop down storage bunk in there. You've got a little slide out drawer there with cup holders and a little tray in there as well. Obviously you've got a glove box there too. It'd be nice to see some more pockets maybe on the dashboard, however. That's the only thing I think we've been missing. So, you know, so you're carrying a clipboard with you, you know, there's maybe no way to just stick that, or, you know, sort of put bits of paper down. That's maybe the only thing. Or even just a silly thing like having a pen, you know, clip somewhere. That would be quite nice. But in terms of the overall layout, it's very clean, it's very simple, it's very easy to look at and very easy to understand. The seat materials. So you've got this sort of leatherette style material. Now I think this is brilliant. As standard, you get the driver's seat and the outer passenger seat is both heated and ventilated. That's standard. Heated steering wheel, standard as well. That's the sort of thing, you know, as I say, the creature comforts that van drivers are starting to sort of look for. You know, as I say, you're spending your working day in the van, that's what you want. So as I say, we've got a nice clean layout on the inside. Everything feels, you know, reasonable quality. Yeah, okay, maybe there's some areas that are slightly lower rent plastic, or you maybe would like it to be a bit more damped. For instance, that area there, you know, just be nicer if it's a bit nicer to operate. But as I say, in terms of the ability just to wipe it clean, keep the surfaces free of dust and things like that, then you can't really ask for much more. The driving position, I say, is for me one of the big things about it. You know, I'm also going to be driving the van as well today. You get a good driving position, good visibility, nice steering wheel, nice armrest as well from the door point of view, so the comfort is as you'd expect. I didn't mention on the design walk around, you also get a reverse camera on it as well, because obviously there's no mirror there, so you do get the infotainment screen up there where you've got the reverse camera image, and we'll talk a bit more about the infotainment screen when I'm out driving the van. But on the whole, in terms of an interior for a van, the two things that I'm taking away from it, first of all, is I really like the nice simplistic design of it. I like the standard equipment levels, they're very high on it, as you'd expect. And as I say, the surfaces and the ability just to sort of, you know, use things very easily, you know, just to say, without having to delve through loads of screens on an infotainment system, rather just physical buttons here is excellent. And as I say, it's just easy to keep it all nice and clean. So yeah, in terms of a working van, there's not really else you could really wish for down here. Maybe except for a few extra bits of storage. But other than that, decent enough, I'd say. Right, let's talk about important stuff now, such as battery sizes, charging speeds, all the rest of it. Now, I've been saying to you there's two variants. There's going to be a third variant, the L3H3, so longer length, maximum height. That's coming later in 2025, okay? So there is available sort of like figures for that, but as I say, it's not in the UK at the moment. These are the launch vehicles that we've got here, which is two battery sizes, either a 67 kilowatt hour battery or an 83 kilowatt hour battery. Okay, so if you go for the 67 kilowatt hour battery, then you've got a combined WLTP range of 188 miles, okay? If you go for the larger 83 kilowatt hour battery, that ups that to 230 134 miles. And that's the combined cycle. If you're just using the van within the city limits, then they're suggesting that you could potentially see another 100 miles on top of that if it's just local running you're doing. But bear in mind those are WLTP tested without a load bay without a payload, sorry, effectively. Right, charging speeds. 120 kilowatts on the 67 kilowatt hour battery, but you up to 140 kilowatts on the 83 kilowatt hour battery. So that's quite decent. 20 to 80% charge is done in 36 minutes. So again, if you're looking about the downtime of the van, that is the sort of, you know, your downtime, getting that maybe quick charge through the day. That's all you're going to be looking at. The batteries themselves are LFPs as well, so I know that's important to some people, but as I say, one of the big things for me with this is you're going to have the capability of vehicle to load as well with this van, which again is a working vehicle. That's going to be something that you're going to be interested in knowing about, I would suggest. I also mentioned towing capability as well, so if you're towing a braked trailer, you can tow a braked trailer on this at up to 2 tons, which again for this type of vehicle I think is excellent. Right, what's it like out on the road? Well, it's a front-mounted motor, 231 PS, so it's quite powerful in fairness, you know, for a commercial vehicle, which is good in a sense. Obviously, if you've loaded up, you know, with a relatively decent amount of payload, that you want it not to sort of like feel underpowered. And the first thing that really sort of like springs to mind when you drive the Farizon SV is, as I said inside, it feels like a proper electric vehicle. It doesn't feel like a van that's been converted to be electric. It feels like an electric van. It's difficult to describe. There's a sort of like a modernity to it that, you know, there's certain other sort of like commercial vehicles that we've reviewed on the channel don't have. You know, they do feel like, you know, a Transit that now has an electric motor, a Fiat Ducato with an electric motor. This doesn't feel like it should have an engine at all, which is good. You know, this is what you want. You want something that feels like a bespoke electric vehicle, and that's exactly what you get. It's got nice pickup, it's got good steering, you know, as you turn into these corners. Now, just to be clear, I'm not driving this out on the public road, I'm driving this on the Millbrook Proving Grounds hill route, as they call it, the place that actually filmed the car chase in Casino Royale, James Bond, when he does the role of the Aston, filmed here. Anyway, I'm getting away from it. Yeah, there's good turning from the steering. I will say, I do find the driving position a tiny little bit awkward. That's the only thing for me. Now, I'm not a particularly abnormal sort of size of bloke. I'm 5'8", you know, and I do find that, you know, I'm sitting quite low and my leg is sort of slightly up to get the accelerator pedal. So it's something that you think you would need to probably just check that you're comfortable with. However, that's about the only thing I can say that's sort of like bad about the driving position. There's a tiny little bit of too much roll, I think. As you tip it into the bend, you just feel it just pitch out a little bit, you know, at the front. You just feel it pitching a little bit too much in some respects. But it's not bad. And again, if you were spending the majority of the time sort of like driving around, you know, your local area, sort of like doing drops and so forth, you know, or, you know, longer drives on motorway, then I would think it's probably quite a comfortable beast. Obviously, you can adjust things like brake regeneration. There's a button, it's done via a button down here, which is quite nice. You don't have to go into the screen. It is quite loud when you put it into sort of like the, you know, sort of like you change the modes. So you've got 3 regen modes, levels 1, 2 and 3. So I mean, that'll be quite good again for sort of like, you know, inner city work, where you're allowing the van just to pull up itself. So that's quite nice. Let's take that mode off. Let's go back that. So that's it in low now. And then there's drive modes. You've got sport. Now sport really sharpens things up, and the throttle pedal becomes quite sharp, I'd say. Yeah, it's one thing I've been noticing sort of like with a lot of the cars I've been driving, how more mechanical the throttle pedals are feeling. This is going back to sort of like what we think of, you know, when we first started driving some of those electric vehicles. That sport mode just sharpens that throttle pedal up, just maybe just a little bit too much. That could do with a bit more of a mechanical feel in my book. It is a drive-by-wire system that the van has, so you know, there is a lot, you know, sort of done through electronics and stuff like that. But maybe that's one downside, or maybe it just takes a little bit getting used to in some ways. But apart from that, I have to say, it's quite an impressive piece of kit. It's quite nice. There's good visibility. As I say, you've got this great big panoramic windscreen in front of you, you know, with this sort of, you know, the front three-quarter vision that's out the side there. You know, it's very easy to place the van. I just wish that throttle pedal was, you know, when you, I suppose you don't have to be in sport, that's the one thing. If you go into eco or go into normal mode, that's probably a little bit better. So whilst it does actually give you a little bit more of a, you know, a little bit more on the throttle, which is quite nice in some respects, maybe you just want to just get used to it in the eco mode. Now, that's what it was like around the hill route. Let's see what it's like on effectively a motorway, because I'm now going to take it on Millbrook's banked bowl. So it's a 2-mile banked circuit, a continuous circuit around here. You're not going to be able to see it because we're not allowed to film outside. I might be able to get some B-roll and put that up. But it's this 2-mile continuous banked circuit which will emulate sort of like a motorway for us. So let's get it up to speed and see what noise levels are like and so forth with that. Right, where are we going here? We're going round to the left here. I have to say the visibility is absolutely superb. That is the one thing I will say. It is superb. Right, are we okay to enter? Here we go. Traffic coming from right. This is one of the most disorientating. I've driven around this place so many times. When I used to work for Aston Martin, we used to do our driver training up here. Some custom high-speed driver training. And you know, it's quite a thing to drive at. It's quite a blustery day today. Right, so there's 70 miles an hour. Oh, it's telling me I'm going over speed. But there's 70 miles an hour. That's alright. It's a little bit of wind noise, but it is a van, you know, there's a little bit of wind noise around it. Ride quality, well, that's interesting because actually you've got, oh, sorry, just creeping up too high there. The ride quality, you've got double wishbone suspension up at the front of the van, which is relatively unique in some respects, but you've got your usual leaf springs at the back. So whilst you've got that sort of like front suspension that's quite nice, that's quite sort of like sophisticated and car-like in a lot of ways, you know, at the rear you've got traditional leaf springs. So that's what you'd sort of expect on it. Let's just get it up into this section. How are we doing here? Yeah, there's a reasonable amount of wind noise, that's all I would say. So there's maybe more, when that's 70 miles an hour, it's a steady 70. It's tracking, because I've done 71 there, it's tracking straight and true, so it's quite nice in the sense of, you know, it doesn't feel like it's wandering around. Oh, there's a Gordon Murray T50 there. A lot of car manufacturers do their testing here, so it's you tend to see some stuff. That's why we're not allowed to film actually outside here. But yeah, it's nice. It's okay. It's a decent van. As I say, there's a tiny bit more wind noise than I'd expect. I've got a slightly awkward driving position. It would be nice, it would be nice, the steering wheel only adjusts for height, it doesn't adjust for reach. So that would be quite nice if we could just maybe have a bit more of a tailored driving position. There is a, you know, you can knock the seat back a little bit to give you a bit more of a reclined drive, but there's no height adjustment on the seat. That's maybe a bit of a downside. But in terms of, it's just wind noise. There's no mechanical noise from it. There's no, you know, sort of like loud motor noise, whine coming through it. It's stable. Bear in mind, this is the H1, L1H1 that I'm driving. So this is the one that doesn't have the high roof. but then I'm on a banked circuit. You're not going to be driving on a banked circuit when you've got one of these out dropping your parcels, are you? Let's be honest. I'd say it's way better to drive than the likes of, I'm just going to come off here now, it's way better to drive than the likes of the Stellantis vans in some respects, you know, but I'd say things like, you know, Transit's probably still the one, you know, in terms of what's nice to drive and things like that. But as I say, what I've taken away from the drive I've had in this today is it feels like it's always been designed to be an electric van, not a van that's been converted or re-engineered. Is probably the best description to use there. Re-engineered to take an electric drivetrain, and that's the difference, which actually makes it quite nice. If you take it on to sort of like, you know, more of these sort of like areas that are a bit more like, you know, sort of like town work and city work, the steering's actually quite nice. The steering's got quite a nice bit of feedback to it, and it's actually got, there's no vagueness to it, so as soon as you turn the wheel you do get, you know, a reasonable response. So in terms of, you know, if you're manoeuvring about in the town or the city, this is not a bad piece of kit. It's alright. Now I've just come off the ball, but what I want to do is I just want to see how manoeuvrable it is at low speed and what it's like for just low speed manoeuvre. It's all very well driving it on a nice hill route and a big bank circuit and things, but what's it actually like if you were to just drive it around town? Well, as I say, if you keep in the normal mode, what you've actually got is quite a nice throttle response. You know, it's relatively, yeah, it's got nice pickup, nothing too loud. Keep it out of the sport mode and actually that's not too bad. It's when you're in the sport mode it does actually feel a bit more like an electric switch. So let's just see what it's like in terms of turning, shall we? Oh blimey O'Reilly, that is an incredibly tight turning circle. That is an incredibly tight turning circle. That is phenomenal. Right, let's just see what it's like to reverse into this parking bay as well. Gosh, I can't get over that. Can I get over how tight that turning circle is? Right, well, so you've got cameras on the van as well. 360-degree cameras. Gosh, that is a nice and easy van to manoeuvre. That, I have to say, is probably the most impressive thing about this van, is how easy it is to manoeuvre. So round about here, the tight turning circle they're giving us in reversing. Absolutely fantastic. I'm so impressed with that. Right, better give the keys back to them now. Right, now the most important thing you want to know about is how much do they cost? Well, £45,000 plus VAT up to £56,000 plus VAT is your pricing range. And by the time that the complete range is launched in the UK, there will be 8 variants. So that's obviously going to go right up to the longest length and the highest van, so the L3 H3. Now let's talk about confidence in the brand itself, because obviously, as I say, when we're talking about the Chinese brand of cars that have been coming in, a few people have been saying about, oh, well, I don't really know if they're going to be around for that long. Well, as I say, this is owned by Geely Holdings, and as I say, they're the group that own the likes of Volvo, Polestar, Lotus. They've got ties in with Mercedes-Benz and all sorts. So in fairness, they are part of a huge conglomerate. There's going to be a lot of dealers in the UK when they start the rollout in through 2025. But what Farizon are starting to look at is maybe having less dealerships but a broader spread of coverage. The other important thing for you to think about is warranty and parts supply. All the vans are going to come with a 4-year warranty, and with regards to your parts supply, they've got to deal with DHL to get parts supplied overnight. So if they do need any extra repairs on it, then what you're looking at is the shortest possible time, because if you've got within 24 hours parts supply, that's going to be important to get that van back on the road and back working for you. So they are taking this very, very seriously, and they're looking at all aspects of whole life ownership costs, which is important for you as an owner operator. So in terms of competition, what are you going to be looking at? Well, of course, you don't need me to tell you there's plenty of competition out there in the commercial vehicle world. There's obviously Ford with the Transit, you've got Mercedes-Benz with things like the Sprinter and the Vito van as well. Of course, you've got the Stellantis group offerings from Vauxhall, from Citroën, from Peugeot, and of course they're tying as well with Toyota. So there's certainly plenty of competition out there for it. But as I say, this is a new Chinese brand that's coming into the UK market. But what seems very, very impressive to me, first of all, is the fact that they are hitting the market with quite a broad spectrum of vehicles. But more than that, they're designing this as an EV from day one. Now, we've seen this in the commercial vehicle world before, you know, and they've kind of come and gone. But there's something about the Farizon that I think it's going to be here to stay, this one. And the fact that it's been designed as an EV from ground up rather than a van that's been sort of, dare I suggest, a multi-energy platform, all this, like the benefits are there with really none of the drawbacks. As I say, we've seen a huge amount of Chinese entrants into the car market, especially in the electric car market, you know, over the last couple of years. It's really nice to see someone actually taking the bull by the horns when it comes to the commercial vehicles as well. And that's the big key for me, the fact that it is a commercial vehicle that's been designed as an EV from the ground up. Now, we've only had a very small piece of time with the van today, so it's very difficult to get a full idea of what it's actually like in some respects without sort of using it properly over our normal road test review. But from our early taster today, what I can say is this is a really impressive entrant into a very competitive market space. The fact that Farizon are really, really thinking about this, sort of like the owner operator, what's important to them, parts supply, dealer coverage, customer service, making sure the van has as little downtime as possible. And that's before we talk about the fact that it's a product that's been designed as an electric vehicle from day one. It only shows good signs and good things to come from this company. Thank you for watching another commercial vehicle review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below. If you've enjoyed this very quick review of the Farizon SV, then of course, make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and don't forget, leave us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the new Farizon SV. Would it tempt you out of a Transit or a Renault Master, or of course a Volkswagen Transporter? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now remember, we're also across all social media platforms as well. So of course, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, you know, TikTok, Instagram, we're on all of them. So give us a follow there as well, because that certainly helps us. And remember, if you're in the marketplace for an electric vehicle, might not be a new Farizon SV van, maybe you're thinking about maybe a used Transit E, or you know, one of the other electric vans that we've covered. How are you going to know more about that if you're looking on the used side? Well, of course, the easy answer to that is stay on the AutoEV homepage on the YouTube channel, because just at the top there's a little magnifying glass. If you type the name of the vehicle you're interested in there, if it's been a new electric vehicle in the UK in the last 5 or 6 years, then of course we've subjected it to the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that, of course, is the AutoEV one. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.